Joining us on the line now is Dr. John Finn. He founded the award-winning Tougher Minds consultancy and has 3 psychology-related degrees, including a PhD. His new book, The Habit Mechanic, shows how to fine-tune your brain and supercharge how you live, work, and lead. Based on the latest brain science, the book offers groundbreaking insights and practical guidance that can quickly transform your life. Welcome to the show, John.
Hey, Hannah, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Very good, thank you. Very good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's great to have you on the show. And this is really interesting because unlike a lot of kind of self-help books that we see on the shelves all the time, this is actually based on science and the latest brain science.
Yes, which tells us that we don't do what we know we should do. We do what we're in the habit of doing. And that's the challenge we face, is that we're inundated with hacks, tips and tricks. But if we just think about the basics, most people now know and agree it's a good idea to eat 5 portions of fruit and vegetables a day or to walk 10,000 steps. And we don't do these basic things because our brain is designed to save energy. So it habitualizes everything. So, an example of that is if I say, don't think of a white elephant, you don't have to think about it. It's already there in your brain because it's just how our brain works. It's on autopilot. We have this, we have sort of an illusion that we're conscious, but we're not really. We're just running on automatic.
Now, of course, with habits, there's bad habits, but there's also good habits, aren't there? It's training your brain into getting used to doing these good habits, whether it's going for long walks, eating well. We naturally do things like brushing our teeth when we wake up in the morning or before we go to bed. That's probably an example of a good habit that we've had throughout most of our lives, and it's getting ourselves into the idea of doing more of those things.
Yeah, so we think about them as super habits and destructive habits. And, an example of a destructive habit might be worrying and beating yourself up. And the thing with our brain is it gets good at what we practice. And often we don't think about thinking as habits, but it absolutely is habitual. So we have about 100 billion neurons in our brain, and those neurons change they're like plasticine. They change in accordance with what we practice. So if you keep practicing telling yourself how useless you are and how you'll never be able to do it, worrying, beating yourself up, you are growing wires in your brain for that way of thinking. And that way of thinking becomes more automatic. So the way that we think about it is not all habits are equal. Some are disproportionately unhelpful and some are disproportionately helpful. So the ones that are disproportionately unhelpful we call destructive habits. And the ones that are disproportionately helpful are called super habits. So really our program is all about helping people to uncover their destructive habits and destroy them and start to learn about their super habits and build more of them. And that's what the book shows people how to do.
It's really interesting that there's a kind of science behind it, because I suppose you could say it's a similar thing when you were saying about our brains and how we think about things and having worrying thoughts all the times that our brains get used to it. I think before we're kind of led to believe that maybe it's a more esoteric thing, if you like, the idea of positive thinking or negative thinking, negative energies, all that kind of thing, which, there could be an argument to say there isn't necessarily a science connected to that, but there obviously is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a good parallel is the physiological sciences. So let me explain what I mean by that. About 20 years ago, myself and other peers were on the first wave of sports scientists going into professional sports teams to take the science of physiology and biology and help the sports teams to embed that into how they physically condition their athletes. And if you take any professional football team, for example, and if you look at the physical conditioning levels of their athletes 20 years ago compared to today, they are seismically different. Because we started to use first principle thinking about what actually impacted on the physical conditioning of athletes. And what neuroscience and things like functional MRI scanners are doing is they're allowing us to sort of take the same approach to how we psychologically condition ourselves, so that we don't have to rely on what we call black box theoretical models from the 60s or from even up to 100 years ago. You know, most psychometrics are based on theories from about 100 years ago, way before we understood how brains worked. We've only been able to look inside human brains for about 20, 25 years. And our brains are the most complex thing in the known universe. So it's taken quite a while to understand what is going on. But we are at the point now, where we can use insights from science to really help us to not only understand how we think, but to literally reprogram our brains. And that's the sort of the pinnacle of reprogramming your brain is to build more super habits and destroy more destructive habits, or in our language, to become a habit mechanic, which is what the book is all about. The book took me over 20 years to write.
Oh,
so
wow.
All these ideas have been tried and tested with tens of thousands of people. So it's, the old school physical conditioning was kind of more likely to give you a hamstring injury than to really get you super fit to play a game of football. I'd say the same thing with the old ways of thinking about psychology are more likely to do more damage than good. So we've got to use these new insights, and all you need to do is read The Habit Mechanic and it will show you exactly what to do.
Fantastic. I think it's amazing that I read out when talking about you coming on earlier that science shows that 98% of what we do and think every day is a habit. That's incredible.
Yeah, and that's the minimal. And it's hard for us to get our heads around this because, again, we have this illusion that we're thinking consciously all the time. But the idea of don't think of a white elephant, it's already there in your brain. A lot of the time, we're running on 100% automatic. You know, people say, "Oh, I wasn't thinking straight," or "I just was." People say that, "Oh, I was just not really thinking about." You know, it's that sort of things like when you lock the door, you don't consciously lock the door. It's just automatic, and it all goes back to our brain is trying to save energy, because for most of our existence, energy. So we're Homo sapiens as a species. We've been around for about 300,000 years. Many people have read the book Sapien now, which was a bit of a zeitgeist over the last 5 years. And supermarkets are a pretty new thing, you know, having an excess of calories, which is why we're seeing our obesity rates go through the roof, is quite a new thing. So we're designed to save energy. And what we don't logically think about is that when we're thinking, it burns a lot of energy when we're thinking very consciously. And that's why people procrastinate on mentally challenging work, because our brain doesn't like burning energy without getting an immediate reward. So it loves going on social media where it gets instantaneous feedback and rewards, social rewards. But it doesn't like writing the new report, which is mentally complex, because it's not getting an immediate reward. So that's why we procrastinate. So we can see these very basic brain rules. They thread throughout our entire life. And they also explain why we've become addicted to things like social media, eating too much, not exercising enough, not sleeping properly because we're staying up and watching Netflix, you know, whatever. So yeah, it's very, very interesting.
So once we know all of this, then I know obviously that the information is in the book, but can you just give us a couple of kind of tips and ideas on things that we can do in order to build better habits and get rid of bad ones?
Yeah, so the key is that we use what we call habit building plans. So we've created these 5-minute habit building plans. So you can literally start to build a new super habit in 5 minutes. And they're laced throughout the book. But maybe a quick tool that we could start to try to habitualize would be our daily 3-to-1 reflection tool. So in the book, there's about 35 different tools, all of which are really super habits if you build them. The daily 3-to-1 reflection is at the end of every day, write down 3 positive or helpful things about the day. That could be, so here's an example. I went for a run this morning, not necessarily all that positive in the north of England where it's raining and it's a bit cold, but a really good thing for me to do. Could be I got to work with some lovely people today. It could be I got to help lots of people by speaking on your show. And then the next thing is you write down one thing that you could do better in the next 24 hours. So I might say, I need to be in bed 10 minutes earlier tonight than I was last night. So writing down a 3-to-1 daily reflection is a great habit to get into, because you start to reprogram how you think about your day, because most people just beat themselves up and they worry about all the problems and they don't even see lots of the good things that have been going on for them. So it's that type of thing, really simple, practical things that we can do. But again, it's one thing knowing that, it's another thing building into a habit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's interesting, the 3-to-1 thing. So you're saying 3 things that are good and 1 thing that you could do better.
Yes. So 3 helpful or positive things and 1 thing that I can do better in the next 24 hours. And we actually have an app called the Habit Mechanic University app, which people can get from the Apple or Google stores. And you'll see people every day doing that inside the community. So you can actually see this stuff happening in real time in the app.
Okay, so you can be inspired by what other people put.
Yeah, and learn and see what other people are doing. Yeah, so the app and the book work together.
Okay, fab. So it must be very weird for you having this book out then, having worked on it for more than 20 years. How does it feel?
Feels great, because people tell me almost daily that the book's changing their life because it's so powerful. And we know that. And my mission is to make it as easy as possible for people to be at their best using cutting edge insights from science. I started my career working in elite sport, and I moved into education, then into business. So we've proven these tools across all these different contexts. And the Habit Mechanic shows people how to do this for themselves, but also how to use this in their businesses or as leaders to infuse this stuff into their cultures, etc. So we're just really excited that it's out there and it's actually making a positive impact on people's lives every single day.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. I noticed the amazing reviews that it's got on Amazon. Lots of incredible responses from people, which must be lovely.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So, there's loads of stuff out there that tell you that they're going to change your life. They don't, because they don't move you past knowing what to do. That's why the Habit Mechanic approach is different, and it's all in the book. So the book isn't one of these where it's one idea repeated 10 times. It literally is a toolkit for life. It's a manual for success, and it's just about reading little bits at a time. I pick the book up every day and I read it. We train people how to become habit mechanic coaches, and they use the book in their coaching. So it's just such a powerful tool, and now it's available for everybody.
Yeah, great stuff. And one of the things that you mentioned, which you talk about in the book, which is a really interesting one, the power and the importance of stop beating yourself up, stop giving yourself a hard time about things. What sort of damage does that do then?
Yeah, a lot of damage, unfortunately. So in the short term, more brain fog, because your brain, this is all about stress. So more brain fog, more worry and anxiety. And in the long term, increased chance of depression, dementia, cancer. I don't feel good about saying that, but that's real. In the UK, we're seeing that we've got right now 1.5 million people signed off sick because they've got anxiety and depression. So this is absolutely real. The post-COVID world is making it easier to habitualize these things like worrying and beating ourselves up. So what we need to do is work out how to build better stress management super habits. And we actually just released a short course to show people how to do this. It's called Destroy Your Stress in 5 minutes. And you can get that from the website as well. And it breaks all this down into simple steps. So yeah, really stress is at the heart of a lot of it. Well, I'd say all of this stuff, because we're just overwhelmed. But with the right knowledge, skills and habit building tools, we can learn how to get better at dealing with stress and habitualize our responses to doing that. And we've got these tried and tested ways of doing it.
Yeah.
So you can get it from the book, or you can get it from the course as well, which is really good.
And is it widely accepted now then that stress can cause those diseases and things that you mentioned? It can have major effect on your health and not just well-being, your actual physical health.
Yes, absolutely. So there's primary correlations we can see, but also secondary relationships. If you're overly stressed, you don't sleep as well. And then that leads to all these other these diseases as well. Because ultimately, we're living in a world where it's easier to be stressed than ever before. Stress is an absolutely natural response, but it's only designed to last about 3 or 4 seconds. And when it goes on longer than that, it starts to literally destroy our brain, and it stops us building new wires in our brain that allow us to actually overcome all the challenges that we're experiencing. So yeah, absolutely. It's at the heart of all these problems that we're seeing. And then poor sleep, poor diet, poor exercise happen because we're overly stressed. But then it just becomes a big negative cycle, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So getting better at dealing with the stress is key.
That's interesting what you said, that it's a natural reaction and it's only supposed to last 3 or 4 seconds. So therefore, if you do feel stressed about something, if it just suddenly, hits you, I'm so stressed out, can you kind of, would it sort of be okay or be a lot better if you express that stress like I just did? I'm so stressed, say it out loud or whatever, and then kind of take a deep breath and say, nope, I'm okay now, and carry on with your day. Will that have huge benefits then, as in trying to get it to last 3 or 4 seconds?
Yeah, so what we need to do is get better at processing the stress. So we process stress. There are 2 super habits we teach people. One is called focused breathing, which would go further and deeper than just taking a deep breath. So you learn about why regulating your breathing is so key for managing the fight or flight response. And then we've got this set of tools called around focused reflection. So actually thinking about the stress isn't all that helpful because of how our brain works. What we need to do is write things down in a structured way. So if you go to chapter 22 of the Habit Mechanic, the stress chapter, we show you lots of different tools. And if you use the stress toolkit, we go further. So yeah, in your simple explanation, Hannah, yeah, it's a good starting point, but we need to go further to really get to the crux of it. We need to habitualize how we do that.
Interesting.
So it's about getting better at processing out the stress. And we can absolutely build habits into our day-to-day that allow us to do that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, if people want more information, if they need some help with their habits, then they should definitely get a copy of the book, The Habit Mechanic, Fine-Tune Your Brain and Supercharge How You Live, Work and Lead. It's available on our website, tre.radio, and it's by Dr. John Finn, who we've been chatting with. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Henry. People can also go to the website, which is tougherminds.co.uk.
Fantastic. Tougherminds.co.uk. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Take care.